Hey guys, welcome to another MLS updater with me, Mike. Last week we looked at the Eastern Conference, and this week's having a focus on the West. I'm glad today to be joined by Mike Turner. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike. How are you today?
Really good, thank you. Really good. Yeah, enjoying a nice warm January down here in the in South America.
Oh, yeah.
Can't complain. But Mike, let people know a bit about yourself. Why you're a good person to be having a little conversation about the West Conference with.
With our Soccer Capital podcast, we've been doing it now for a year and a half. And of course, St. Louis City SC, which we're recording about, won't even start play for another, 2 months, 6, 7 weeks. So we've been covering a lot of MLS, expecting them to be in the Western Conference. So we've covered them quite a bit over the past year. And I myself have been following MLS pretty closely as a neutral for about 12 years now.
Yeah.
And one of our co-hosts, Sean Campbell, has been doing it for even a little longer than me. So we've got a pretty good understanding of how things have gone in the last dozen years, at least in MLS.
Oh, that's good. I love a long-term scouting for the
Yeah.
side as you go in. That's excellent. And let's kick off with your side then. Obviously, the new expansion team is St. Louis City coming in. A great start in MLS Next Pro for the second team, getting into the finals there. And so there's a basis for the team already in place. Some DPs already signed up. Can you let us know a bit about some of these big signings that you've made?
Yeah. Actually, probably our biggest one and the most famous one is not a designated player. It's a goalkeeper, Roman Berkey, longtime of Dortmund, played in the Champions League. He came over on a free transfer as he had lost his starting position with Dortmund. Came over last summer. He's on a max TAM deal, not a DP.
Okay.
He did play some in MLS Next Pro in the second half of the season, showed what he can do. Uh, a lot of people have seen him play. He is not the lights out goalkeeper, I don't think.
Yeah.
He's got a capability of a howler or two, but he is extremely good with his feet, and his distribution in MLS Next Pro, of course, being a lower division, was extremely good. And that's something that we're looking forward to. Um, we know Coach Bradley Carnell and technical director Lutz Feinenstiel are very, very firm on running a high energy, high press sort of team. Think about the Red Bulls, what they call energy drinks soccer, as Matt
Yeah.
Doyle on MLSsoccer.com calls it. So that's going to fit in well coming out of the back. Our two DPs, we have midfielder Edward Lohen, German national player that was a German youth team international player. He has a long history of working in the Bundesliga. He'll be a box-to-box midfielder is what's anticipated. And João Klaus, a Brazilian who was signed by Lutz Pfannenstiel when he was technical director of Hoffenheim in the Bundesliga. He'll be our forward. Basically, they're designated players because these two came in on transfer fees. Everybody else that we signed coming from Europe had basically been on free
Yeah.
transfers. Our first signing was a little-known player named Selmir Pedro, coming out of, I believe it was the Croatian League. I could be wrong on that. It escapes me at the moment. He's a left back, a younger player. Big signing was Thomas Ostrak, had been with Kern, been out on loan. Hadn't been getting the playing time at Kern, but Manuel Veith, the transfer market, is big on him and it says that Bundesliga's technical directors can't believe that he went to MLS. He's only
Okay.
22. He's a attacking midfielder. I think he might be somebody to really watch on our team. We got a center back in Joachim Nielsen, also had been with Arminia Bielefeld in the Bundesliga before they got relegated. He is a Swedish national team player.
Yeah.
And he did not play in MLS Next Pro because he suffered a knee injury late before he came over on with the Swedish national team. And we also got young Isaac Jensen coming out of Denmark. He's 19, more of a development player, attacking winger, forward type player, but it does seem to have a lot of attacking nous with him. I think the best part of our team is going to be in the back. You got Roman Berkey, you got Joachim Nielsen. We got the trade from Tim Parker on expansion draft day from Houston, where they're paying half of his big contract. And we sent over like $500,000 in GAM. Yep. That's two quality center backs, one with a lot of MLS experience. And Parker did play with the Red Bulls, so he has experience in this type of system. Jake Nowitzki, we did get off a free agency as one of our fullbacks. We're expecting perhaps that Pedro will be the other fullback on the team. And then we just signed Yagalo Bloom, coming out of South Africa with Kaizer Chiefs, 22 years old. What I hear, he's a really good player. Seen some of the clips. He's sort of that defensive midfielder, run around, make big plays kind of player. We're excited about him. That's going to be the strength. The forwards, Klaus has to be proven. We got Nicholas Giacchini in the expansion draft. He was with Orlando for about half the season. He's got 8 caps with the U.S. men's national team. And we also picked up Samuel Adeniran from Seattle. He had been in the USL Championship for a while. So our striker core leaves a lot to be desired. In the back, I think we'll be strong. The midfield should be a high energy, high press, trying to get a lot of turnovers, hopefully set up easy chances for the guys up front to convert. And likewise with a strong back line, hopefully we won't give up too many goals and keep us in most games in our first season.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see. There's never a blueprint for an expansion side. There's been some hits and misses over the years. So it'll be very exciting to see how this turns out. But it seems a very entertaining project. The staff on board seem very engaging, and some of the decisions that seem to be made, like you say, like Tim Parker coming in, add some of that MLS experience along with these new players coming in from abroad, especially the Germany links they got there. And yeah, it'd be very interesting to see how this goes. Obviously, no one departing. But yeah, we'll have to see how St. Louis crack on with their expansion season. Let's move on to LAFC, last year's MLS Cup winners, Supporter Shield winners. Today they've well, it's been announced that Gareth Bale has retired. He won't be coming back on his salary, so there's some space left open financially, and they seem to have used that on Steep Buik. I'm assuming how it's pronounced from Croatia.
I mean, too. I think that's how it's pronounced.
But he's apparently very highly rated on the Guardian's top 40 young players. Another exciting winger, possibly to add to what they've already got with Boanza, Carlos Vela on one, Boanga, sorry, Carlos Vela, and Aaron Long has come in, adding to that central defense. I mean, it seems a very good way to support a roster that's coming off of a very successful season.
Yeah, they look to be very strong. They lost Latif Blessing, who hadn't seemed very happy there for the last couple of years. None of the supporters in St. Louis thought he would be a good fit for the midfield, but that didn't happen. Eddie Segura looks like he might be gone. They won't re-sign him, but they brought in Aaron Long. They brought in Seb Ibagaha. Or actually, they got rid of him. But they did bring in Aaron Long on that. And they're just pretty well set up. Kind of interesting to see if Cifuentes and Palacios do get those transfers that are anticipated. That would just mean more money and more openings for them to go out and try to find some more talent, which despite LA and everything they do and the style of their team, they're now champions. So it's even easier for them to try to bring in somebody with what they need. Bale, of course, only really had one great contribution for the team last season, and it was the biggest one by tying up the game at the death to send it to penalties. So he's got a legacy, even if it was just for one touch.
Yeah, exactly.
It gives an idea of what kind of talent he actually had.
Yeah, as an Englishman, I grew up as a Southampton fan, so I got to see him come through the academy and take over and go on to huge things. There's an incredible season, career for someone with some bumps towards the end at Real Madrid, but but definitely a huge way to go out, and what a way to your final goal as a
Yeah.
professional. It's a great way to finish. I believe Sebas Mendes, one of the other Ecuadorian midfielders, is departing for Sao Paulo. Down in Brazil, but they haven't lost too many. They brought in Daniel Maldonado, a Honduran centre back. There doesn't seem to be a huge amount of change going on in LA. So it looks like they'll definitely come back again as a very strong side with so well managed financially with the roster space that it'd be hard push to not bet on them for competing for a Sports Shield and MLS Cup again. Do you agree on that?
Yeah, I do, except with one caveat. If they make a strong run at CONCACAF Champions League,
True.
as we saw with Seattle, that could hold them down in the domestic. Even they don't, I think, have enough depth on the roster to make those two runs at the same time. No MLS team really has ever been able to do that.
Yeah,
But
that's a good point.
I think they've got a chance to really go for a CCL. And if they put it into that and they get a long run, that could harm their chances. I think they'd still make the playoffs, but we all thought Seattle would too. If they get a couple of injuries in CCL like Seattle did with João Paulo, it's going to really affect their season. But the one of the two, I would expect them to be strong in either CCL or MLS, and maybe both. They might be that strong.
I guess we also have to think about what they'll do goalkeeper wise. Obviously, with Maxime Crepeau's terrible injury in the MLS Cup final, obviously he's very a long term injured injury list player. So have to see what happens there. Maybe a move comes in to sort of back him up further. But we'll have to see. Moving on to the second place side, Austin FC, they've brought in Josi Zardes, has come in as the new centre forward in Austin. They've let a few players go. Ruben Gabrielson has left for personal reasons, wanting more support back home with for his son, with his family. They've brought in Väisänen, I believe, a Finnish centre back. As a replacement for him. There's not been a huge amount of turnover in Austin. I think the most important thing for their fan base will be keeping hold of Sebastian Driussi
and keeping him healthy.
Yeah,
that's a big deal. Zardes could help a lot because Danny Hoyson was the striker and he just never gave him anything. Never been a big fan. Zardes is not what he was just even a few years ago, but he still looks like he can perform on the MLS basis and maybe help score some extra goals for a very strong team. This team looks good. Thomas Pochettino has gone to, when did he go to River Plate? He was on loan there. That's it. Yeah. That's it. My bad. We picked up Jared Stroud from them before the end of last season on a trade that was agreed with. And they got lost Felipe Martins, but they seem to have plenty to overcome that. They drafted CJ Foudry in the super draft. A lot of people had him pegged as the #1 pick. It did not work out that way. And so that could help see what his development is, though he's a young kid, so he's probably not ready for the first team. And this year, unlike St. Louis City, they're going to be starting their MLS Next Pro and their development league this season. So they're a year behind City on this. But of course, they're a couple of years ahead of us in the league and have a second place finish in the West to show for it, and an extremely strong season last year. And I'm expecting a very strong season from them this year as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was a huge turnaround for Austin from the year before. And they started to add some depth. Alfonso Campo Chavez from Seattle's come in. Sofian Jafal from DC United. Probably not players that are going to walk into a starting 11, but it adds to that depth. Their starting 11 last year was very good, and it was difficult to try and if changes needed to be made, the drop off when they were bringing in sort of players off the bench at times wasn't what you would have hoped, I guess, as an Austin fan. So hopefully adding this depth might will help those first team players as well, give them maybe a bit of a chance to come off after 17 minutes once in a while and keep them all healthy. But yeah, we'll have to see how they get on. 2 very different seasons in their 2 years as a MLS side. So we'll have to see what year 3 brings in Austin. But staying in Texas, FC Dallas. they've lost Matt Hedges, a long-time centre-back. He's gone on a free to Toronto, but they brought in Seba Zebiaga from LAFC, as we
Yeah.
mentioned. Giovanni Jesus has come in from Brazil, a 21-year-old right back. And it looks like they've signed Jose Matula, a winger from Colombia, and Deportivo Cali, someone they seem to have done their research on, not someone I'm aware of.
Right.
But they're a side who they had themselves set up. They know how they like to play, and they did a little bit of business in the summer. How are your thoughts towards Dallas? Do you think they'll continue as a side that's going to compete?
I think they will. They had a lot of trouble. They'd score early, and often they'd score early last season and then didn't convert the second and third goal to put them away, and lost a lot of points that way. The loss of Matt Hedges, he's a little long in the tooth and was expensive, but the track record of getting rid of a top center back in MLS doesn't really favor the team that trade them off or sell them off. And I'm afraid it might be that way, and they could use it. But Alan Franco has he's going into his second season in MLS, and often it takes players a season to adjust to the travel, the climate, the style of play, and everything. And him teaming up with Jesus Ferreira and Paul Arriola, who have a wonderful combination going with the national team and with the club, they could have a better chance to score a lot of goals between them. Franco Jara, who everybody, when he was signed as a DP, thought he was really going to tear up the league, and really hasn't given him anything. I understand his contract's up on June 30th, so they could have an open DP in the secondary the secondary transfer window in the summer to improve on any spots that they have. I expect them to be a playoff team. How strong a one? Will they be as strong as this in the West next year? I'm not so sure. I can't see them really improving or perhaps even reaching the same heights that they hit last year.
No, like you say, Jesus Ferreira scored early quite a lot, and he had a decent season, but towards the end of it, that consistency started to slow down again, and questions were once again raised about, is he a natural finisher? And if they've still got to wait till the summer to have the opportunity to maybe bring in a big signing up front to partner him, maybe, or the rotation, we don't know. So there's going to be some questions around Dallas, but they've definitely got that core that they need. Sebastian Leggett has now got a 6 months under his belt, and they get a full season of him a lot in the midfield. And if they can keep hold of players like Paxton Pomykal and other players like that, then it will be they like you say, I agree, there'll be a challenger, but we'll have to see if Ibeagha can do what Hedges did last year and help keep that defense secure, and if Jesus Ferreira comes back as a goal scorer or as an inconsistent striker, great at linking up play. We'll have to see. Let's move on to LA Galaxy. They've obviously under some penalties now going into the summer transfer window. They won't be able to sign players from overseas, so I can imagine they're rushing around like hell to make sure they do everything they can in January. They brought in Mavinga from Toronto at centre back. He rejoins Greg Vanney. They know each other well. Memo Rodriguez has come in from Houston. They've got rid of DePaul, has gone to Nashville, but the biggest one is Kevin Cabral. They've managed to, with that 1 million GAM fine, they've managed to get that straight back from Colorado and opening up that DP spot. I believe there was interest in Bruno Costa, but that Douglas Costa, sorry, but that didn't come to anything. And freeing up those 2 DP spots was huge for them. They've managed to get one done, and I can imagine there's going to be a lot of work going into bringing someone in this month.
Yeah, I've heard Christian Pavone, who had been with them before, and his contract's what got Chris Klein suspended and got him all the fines. I've heard rumors of him coming back, which on the field seems to be he was quite good for them. When he was there before. They got the GAM for Cabral. They still have to pay a lot of his salary, but the LA Galaxy, they don't have trouble with cash. It's DP slots they've always had trouble with. Costa's very expensive, and they're just not performing. And I'm not surprised by that.
No.
They've lost Sasha Kljestan off the bench. Victor Vasquez went back to Toronto, or did he retire?
No, he did go back to Toronto. He
Then
went back
did
and they've given
retire.
him another year.
So they've lost a lot of players and haven't brought them in. Now I expect to see him try to buy some folks and bring the transfers in. You know, they used to be the Galactical of MLS, bringing everyone in, but really Toronto and Atlanta, in some ways, LAFC have taken that reins in the Galaxy. They're just going to have to buy to stay in the playoffs, I feel. This next season, they're going to need an influx of talent, especially in that winger position that Cabral has vacated and opened up with a DP.
Yeah, I believe they were one of the sides at the first that were looking into Aaron Long and fell down the list and ended up giving up on that. Another centre back, I imagine, will be key. Whether Mavinga can be that person or not is we'll have to find out. Obviously, they did a bit of work in bringing in Ricky Pooch last year. He now has a full season. Their midfields seem to be a little bit more settled, but yeah, those wing positions and centre back, you'd imagine, could be big areas for them to address now, seeing as they've got those sanctions come the summer. Moving up a little bit further north to Minnesota, they struggled badly towards the end of the season as they lost centre back after centre back. They brought in Doniel Henry from Toronto, Zarek Valentin from Houston to add a bit more depth. Because once they lose one of their two starters, it was impossible for them to compete almost for Minnesota.
Yeah, it's a strange team. You know, it's Bebe Reynoso and a bunch of other people really to score. And if they get out and get into transition, they can be dangerous, but they don't always do it. They did finally get rid of Adrian Hunu, the designated player. They really did nothing for him and spent a lot of time in MLS Next Pro last year. That's a strange place to park a designated player. We'll see if Luis Amarillo can really kick on. We know Reynoso is one of the best players in the league. And they got Minder Garcia also at forward. They seem to be well at setting themselves up in position to score. But is the defense going to be able to keep other teams off of the scoreboard? There's talent here. They tend to get the job done the last few years. I kind of think they'll be around the bottom of the playoffs list this upcoming season is my guess. What's your feeling on them? Because they're a strange team to try to pick.
Yeah, definitely, because you've got, like you say, Reynoso's got so much talent in that number 10 spot. Amaria hasn't been consistent whatsoever, and he's adamant he's a 25 goal a year striker, and I think next year he has to prove that, or things are going to change very quickly on the roster there. If they can get a little bit more consistency at that centre back, that was a huge problem. They seem to lose a little bit of confidence. The way they could go forward changed, as well as how they coped defensively. But they've made a few changes. Cameron Dunbar's coming from LA Galaxy as well. Joseph Rosales has re-signed permanently this time. So they've tried to add a little bit more depth, and we saw later on in the season last year that they were really making the use of those wide players, the amount of speed they've got that can really change the way they play. Reynoso is not a quick player. He's intricate and incredibly clever. So they need differences around him so that they can offer different options. And I think they started to get their idea of how they were going to do that. Now it's giving them a whole season. If they can get that defense fit, if they can have that starting 11 they want for a longer periods of time, then maybe we can see something, because they've got an excellent goalie in Dane St. Clair. So yeah, they've got the pieces there, I think, as long as maybe one of those centre backs steps up a bit more. My concerns is Doniel Henry's injury history. Is he really going to be a part of this team? If he can stay fit, fantastic. That's great for him, great for Minnesota, and probably good for Canada as well. But it's a huge if right now, isn't it? That's the problem.
They're a hard team to pick. I'm just not sure what we're going to get from them at all.
Definitely not. And let's go to another side that's really hard to pick for me personally, Real Salt Lake. So consistently one of those sides that you think, well, they should be written off, but you can't. Each time they've lost Aaron Herrera, right back, who was one of the best right backs in MLS last year, has gone to CF Montreal. But so and again, there hasn't been much. They're one of these sides that seem to the back office seem to sort of wake up a little while after New Year's and think, oh, but yeah, okay, we need to get to work now. So I'm not sure. They've lost Cordova. I don't know if he's coming back at centre forward or not. They're rumored to be bringing in Andres Gomez, a winger from Colombia, on a record 4 million deal. But again, there's not too much to talk about for RSL.
No, there isn't. They kind of did it last year with smoke and mirrors, just making chaos out of the game and finding a way to win. They got Jefferson Savarino, who's proven to be a pretty good MLS player and someone to count on. Yeah, we'll see what they can pull out of the hat. I really don't have a feeling. Any season, do I have a feeling on RSL these days? Are they going to be in? Are they going to be bad? Are they going to be good? Are they going to be just middle of the road? I think they'll be one of the teams in a fight for a playoff spot, honestly.
Yeah, it's going to be another season of defending well, but can they create chances again? And I guess if they're adding another winger and Savarino gets a whole season on the wing, he was moved around quite a bit last year. If they can get a bit more stability there and find someone who can put the ball in the back of the net, then obviously they've got a great team. But finding someone who can put the ball in the back of the net's much easier said than done for any side.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's move to one of the to the next side down, who finished just outside the playoffs last year, Portland Timbers. Not too much gone on there, but what they have done is bring in a new DP, Evander, Brazilian attacking midfielder from FC. Let's see if I pronounce it right, Midtjylland, from
something like
Denmark.
that. Yeah.
There's a lot of excitement. It's for the Timbers there with this player who's very highly regarded coming to this league. A huge outlay spent on him, and they're very much a team in transition. A lot of players who they've relied on heavily are getting very old, and they need to start bringing in these players. I'm a big Moreno fan, who's played in the wing there. Great Santi Moreno's a lot of excitement around him, a little pace. Now they've got another player, new 10, who might be able to push on there. But what is there anything you see from Portland? Do you think there's anything extra that's going to come from them this window, or are we seeing another sort of similar side?
Well, you hope that there's something coming from them, because they need a little something to push them over the edge. I think, especially, how much does Blanco have left in the tank? How long can Diego Chara keep chasing people down from behind at his age?
Yeah.
Does he still have another year? I mean, if he keeps doing this for another 3-4 years, scientists will be involved and wonder what's going on with him. But Evander's a big deal, and that's the step-off point for them. I think right now we still need to see more. We need to see if they make other moves before we really get a good feel of how they're going to be, or if they're going to be just like they were last year, hanging around the bottom of the playoffs and trying to fight their way in.
Yeah, there's still no like set destination for Eric Williamson, who was rumored to be wanting to leave. He's still with Portland Timbers at the moment. He was heavily linked with New England, I believe, at one point, but that was rubbish partway through, and they've gone on with Latif Blessing instead. So he could still be on, which would be great for Portland. I think Portland fans would want him to stay. And I guess they're hoping Evander brings a little bit more to their strikers, who Niashgoda, Felipe Mora has signed a contract extension, I believe. So they've got these players up front that they're hoping to really get something out of. And last season, it hasn't quite come to what they would have hoped. So are we hoping that Evander's going to be able to give them cleaner opportunities, maybe in the penalty area?
And he needs to do it right off the bat in his first season, which is always kind of a hard ask for players coming into MLS. But he seems to be a very good player and a very good signing for them.
Okay, then moving over to their Cascadia Cup rivals, Vancouver Whitecaps. The Canadian side have struggled defensively. It can quite comfortably be said last year. They've lost Jake Nowinski, obviously, as we've mentioned, in the right back position, but they've brought in Matias Laborda from Nacional down in Uruguay. Young centre back with a lot of promise. Karifa Yao has been signed from Montreal. Yeah, another young Canadian centre back there. So they're attempting to do some work on improving that defense. They did a lot of work in the summer, bringing in players like Julian Gressel, and they have a decent, very good looking sort of starting 11. On paper, it seems like they're set and they know where they're going to a degree. But losing Lucas Cavallini obviously needs attention. He's left on the free. His contract expired. They've been linked with an Israeli forward, Tai Baribo, who's been playing very well for Wolfsberger in Austria. And goals, that is another problem. And when you're conceding quite a lot and you're not scoring enough, those two things very much need attention. It seems like Vancouver are trying to get that sorted with some of these moves.
Yeah, they kind of, if you got Gressel on the wing putting those crosses in the box, you need somebody to knock them into the net.
Yeah,
because he will deliver. You've got Ryan Gauld, who's been very impressive in MLS. Andres Kubas, the midfielder that came in last year, impressed the heck out of me. I think he's a really good player. There's some talent here. Is it going to mesh? Is it going to come together? Always seems to be that problem with Vancouver, doesn't it? Even when they have a little bit of talent, something always happens. They can't seem to get everything fixed from the front to the back. And that's what I'll be looking forward from this team coming forward this year. You know, there's a way that they can make the playoffs, but they've got to find some chemistry, play better together, find somebody up front to put the ball in the net, most especially. I just don't think I don't see them making the playoffs this upcoming season from what I see right now.
No, and they're one of those sides that have got CCL as well after winning the Canadian Championships. So they'll be starting their season there as well. And at the moment, it's only Brian White as their only registered striker on the roster. And the difficulties they have is when players need to be rotated, or if players pick up suspensions or injuries, that drop off going into the players below the replacements is too big. And it's something that needs a lot of attention. I think with some of these younger signings, Laborda and Karifiao especially, they're trying to make sure that they've got players who are either starters, like I imagine Laborda would be, or young players who are looking to become starters in the near future. So if they can address some of these things, then it gives them a springboard. But like you say, can they get them all meshed together for this year with a much busier schedule? So we'll have to see. But we'll wish them good luck. Let's move across to Colorado. So another side who struggle at times in front of goal, and they've, as we've mentioned in the LA Galaxy chat, have brought in Kevin Cabral. He'll be one of those forwards, whether he plays on the wing or if he goes into a more central role, we'll have to see. They brought in Calvin Harris from FC Cincinnati for 200,000 in GAM, and Cole Bassett has been recalled from his loans in the Netherlands. So they've addressed some areas, and they're looking to build a bit of depth. They're one of those sides that will consistently compete, but there's always that nagging doubt that they've got what they need to get over the line. Do you see 2023 being another one of those years?
Cole Bassett coming back will help because after he left onto his loan, which didn't go well for him at all in the Netherlands, their midfield fell apart. So he will help that. Cabral, is it worth the gamble? This is a team that had no DPs. Giassi Zardes was so they're bringing in another one. I guess it is, but for a team that their biggest problem was actually scoring goals, to bring up another guy that can always get in position to score and just can't put the ball in the net, doesn't seem to be the answer they're looking for with this team. I got a lot of faith in Robin Fraser, the head coach, to get them together and make them competitive. And be able to allow them to compete throughout the season. But yeah, it's finding goals is their biggest challenge. And right now I'm not seeing it, but they've still got time in this preseason to try to find some, but they're going to need somebody that can really score to push them up to the next level, maybe get back to where they were 2 years ago.
Exactly.
And you remember 2 years ago, a lot of theirs was off of scoring off of set pieces. They were insane in the rate that they were scoring, and that just wasn't sustainable. They were quite good last year as well. That keeps them in the games, and as good as they've been, it shows that they know what they're doing. So they got a chance to score goals that way, but they really need to get some from open play, or they're just they're going to miss the playoffs again.
Yeah, I guess that's what makes this this signing of Cabral confusing from the outside. And it's, you need someone who's lethal, who comes in with high confidence, that can that says to the team, just give me the ball, I'm gonna go, I can get the goals. We'll have to see if for Cabral of it a new setting can it revitalize him. But yeah, they're definitely one that's going to be incredibly hard to pick on whether he's going to be a success on the new signings, if they're going to push them on, or if it's going to be much of the same again. So we'll have to see. But yeah, well, they're not huge spenders, so I don't know if there's going to be too much more coming in January. So that's another thing that we'll have to keep an eye on. But we'll move over to Seattle. Last year, making history with their CCL win at the cost of missing out on the playoffs. I don't think you'll be finding too many disappointed Seattle Sounders fans from last year, despite that. They've missed out on Aaron Long, who's linked with them. He's obviously gone to LAFC. But they have signed Hebert, so they've added a little bit more depth up front. Raul Ruidiaz has so much pressure, so much pressure on his shoulders to be the goal scorer. And as he advances in age, they need the opportunity to at least rotate him. Will Bruin wasn't the man, really. Freddie Montero will do quite well, but again, he's even older, coming towards the end of his career. So getting a sort of recognized striker like Hebert gives Seattle the chance, and Schmetzer the chance, to rotate players as well and keep them fresh this year, you'd imagine.
Yeah, and I think Hebert will help quite a bit with this team. Ladero, still such a good player, but he's getting older, and injuries, back problems don't tend to go away, and he's had some of those lately. Rusnak's still a very good player. They kind of put him all over the field, though, to put out fires.
Yeah, injuries really affected them in the midfield, and Rusnak just got brought further and further back. So I guess they're hoping he gets a full year in that attacking midfield role now.
Yeah, getting João Paulo, getting Obed Vargas back, because once João Paulo went down, Obed Vargas, the young kid from Alaska, did extremely well, and then he got hurt and missed half the season. So they were really hurting. Having those two back are like two big signings alone to this team. Christian Roldan's back. Jordan Morris is there. There's still talent everywhere. They know how to win. They proved it last year early on, paid a price for it in the regular season. But like you said, I think everybody will make that trade. Better than missing the playoffs for the first time ever and not winning CCL. So they're pretty happy with that. And of course, their biggest loss, though, is they lost Garth Lagerwey.
Yes.
Sporting director to Atlanta. But Chris Wabel, his longtime assistant, steps in. He knows what's going on. He knows the way the system works there. So they're set up. Even when they lose such a big piece as Garth Lagerwey, they're already set up with somebody to fill in the role. Even if it's in the front office, it just says something about the way the whole franchise is run right now. And they're kind of a model franchise from top to bottom in the league. Yeah,
definitely. There's so much forward thinking going on across the team. Like, obviously, you making the most of these young players that are coming in. Obviously, we mentioned Obed Vargas, but there's many more that stepped up when called upon this year as well as years prior. And having that opportunity to do that in the back office as well, knowing you've got the information and the knowledge is being shared, and staff are being developed as well, shows how good they can be that way. My curious point on them is in the striker position. I really thought they would keep hold of Adeniran, who went to St. Louis. I thought they need a younger player who can be amongst the squad, not to be the starter. They have Raul Ruidiaz. They brought in Herbert, fantastic, but I thought someone like Adeniran would get some more time in amongst that team to maybe look ahead a year or two down the line when you're not probably going to be able to rely on these strikers you have. But they've gone. Campos Jarvis has gone. They've obviously Nasina's not someone who's going to progress. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there. For me, they everywhere else they seem to be prepared for the future, except up front.
And with us watching a lot of MLS Next Pro, and I went to a lot of matches last season up in St. Louis. Tacoma Defiance is a very solid team. They've got a lot of youth and a lot of good players. For a team that's so old in MLS, they've got a very strong youth development system right now in Seattle as well.
Yeah, I can imagine they'll be back up competing now without next season. They'll be back to firing all cylinders in MLS. And obviously we mentioned Christian Roldan. He's signing up for finishing his career in Seattle, it seems. They've got some of those players committed, which is great for the Cubs' short-term future as much as long-term future. Let's move to Sporting KC, and it seems like we're going to disappointingly not be able to chat about a Ronaldo arrival, as it was reported that they were very close to signing. Obviously, he's gone to Al Nassr, but that would have been an incredible thing to happen. I don't know what that means for Sporting KC going into the transfer market. They've already signed Radoja, the defensive midfielder. They're getting Alan Pulido back, Kinder back from injury as well. But teams know that they're ready to step out and spend some money, and they kind of need to in defense, really. So I don't know if now that this deal isn't happening, will they go out and spend a little bit in other areas because they ended the season in such good form, and they know they have the quality with somebody's played Willie Agada, Eric Tommy that's come in and fantastic. Will they?
Their summer signings were great.
Yeah. Will they spend that money though, going in on the defense, do you think?
They have to. They haven't for years, and it's been the thing holding them back. We expect Sporting Kansas City to be the big rivals for St. Louis City in the years forthcoming. And we play them 3 times this season because of the unbalanced schedule, which is exciting. And we get to see a lot of them. I would have much preferred them last year when they lost Kinda and Pulido in the first before the season started. So you could say they're splashing the cash and bringing in 2 big-time players with just those 2 that they didn't have the entirety of last season. What's interesting is how would a Cristiano Ronaldo really worked with Johnny Russell?
Yeah, exactly.
Russell would have pushed him out of town. I got a feeling.
Yeah, they talk about Peter Vermees, but Johnny Russell's not there. He's never held back. He hasn't been particularly happy with work rate
on that. But as Kansas City, they have to do something with their defense. It's their style of play. Rajoyev will probably help with them getting beat in the back, but they still get isolated too much in defensive midfield. Center backs haven't stepped up, and it's been a problem for a few years that really hasn't been addressed. Excuse me. But I do really expect Sporting Kansas City to be back near the top of the Western Conference again for most of this season, probably with the late season drop-off that we've seen in the past. But I do expect them to be back in the playoffs and still expect them to be a very, very strong team.
Yeah, and amongst all the 90% of teams around MLS that everyone says, oh yeah, and Alex Cayens will be particularly useful on this. Let's move back to the third and final Texas-based side, Houston Dynamo. A difficult season for the Dynamo once again, and they brought in Ben Olsen to replace Nagamura as head coach. Obviously a history in DC United, and he moves down there. It's not been the most sort of excitingly taken head coach appointment, I think, from the fan base.
Let me ask you, do you really think the head coach was the problem in Houston last year?
I think there was plenty of different things going on
Yeah,
there. That was the issue.
problems in defense, bring in Hector Herrera to basically take the same role as Carrasquillo, so they didn't really mesh well together.
Mm.
Uh, and just their front to back, moving the ball forward just wasn't there. Everything seemed unbalanced. It didn't really seem like the coach was the issue. So there's a lot that they got Artur coming in. That'll help in the
Yeah.
midfield. Ivan Franco, forward coming in from Club Libertad in Paraguay, and Brad Smith on the wing. They'll add some attacking to them. I don't know how much he will help on the defensive side.
Mm. It's a good backup, I think. Brad Smith is one of
Yeah.
those sort of regular MLS players who's at a decent level, and I think Seattle missed him in the offense in that wide like
Yes.
wing back role. They really missed him offensively, and so and that's something Houston need to address, getting the ball into the box in some ways, as in from wide areas, as well as the way they're building up through the middle. I really like Ivan Franco. He's someone I've seen in the Libertadores. Watch bits of him. He could be a really exciting player if he fits. Obviously, a friend of Sebas Ferreira, the other Paraguayan
Yep.
the forward there. So that may help, I think, with getting him settled. And if he can get settled and get playing, I think he could be quite an exciting player. And Franco Escobar is apparently coming across from LAFC, so that's another useful signing in the team there. So, but like you say there, you can't pinpoint all the blame on Nagamura for last year's failures. So it's going to be difficult to know how they how they turn everything around, sort of mentally around the camp as well, get everyone bonding together, thinking like a team that is going to go out and say we're going to win this. There's going to be a lot of work to get them in that sort of position.
But that sort of management is Ben Olsen's calling card. So maybe that's the purpose for the hire, was to try to get the team to mesh and find the chemistry they need. And they also need to find chemistry in that city and get some excitement around that squad as well, because Houston's such a large market, and with such poor attendance usually, and a pretty drab atmosphere when you watch it on TV. They could really use to get it fired back up like it was when they first moved there years ago.
Yeah, it'd be exciting to see. Another one of those sides that could really jump quite high, or they could be exactly the same spot. Really hard to tell. The final side in the West, let's have a quick look at, is the San Jose Earthquakes. They've took their time in confirming their new head coach, Luchi Gonzalez, coming in for this season. They haven't made any signings really, but they have got this incredible youth academy that they seem to be trying to push players forward from that. Any real rumor I can think of the top of my head is Benji Kinkanovic could be leaving, but he's still on the roster at the moment. They've still got that same roster, which under Luchi Gonzalez you'd imagine would be a lot stronger than it was under Matias Almeida. And they seem to be doing a lot. They've done a lot of work in the background and getting the academy and the first team linked together, players getting more prepared to take those steps. And there's not going to be huge signings, it seems like, but they seem to be ready to improve. But do you think it's going to be a slow process?
I do. I think it's going to take time. I think that's why Luchi Gonzalez came in. Of course, they had to wait for him to finish with the U.S. men's national team to come in. But they do have a strong, and they've already sold off some of their better players and expect to sell off like Cade Cowell and that. So, it's always the thing like FC Dallas always had. How much is it youth development? How much is it putting a winning product on the field? You kind of have to throw all your cards on the table with youth development and wait for that to pick up, start getting the sales, starting getting everybody in the academy, and then you see the results on the field, is the way I think it's going to go. And who knows what ownership's going to do, how soon they'll fold from this plan and go back to something crazy like Almeida in the future. But if they stick to it, it's going to take a while. And they picked up Michael Baldisimo, who Vancouver left.
Yes, that's
out there. They got a left back, Daniel Mooney from Indiana in the draft. That's a good pickup for a youth development team. But I am not seeing much here that says they're going to improve much at all. They'll be fighting for a wooden spoon, I got a feeling.
Yeah, possibly. They brought in Trauco, the Peruvian left back. So I guess that's the player for this season in left back, and they have this young player obviously from the draft that's going to be looking to develop and get minutes. But yeah, they're going to be they're really hard to pick because you've got Jeremy Abovasi, you've got these players that can be particularly good, but they give up some of the most crazy goals. The way they defend, there's going to be a lot of work that needs to go into that, and that's not just something that's changed by bringing in a new coach or bringing in new signings. They have to get themselves prepared across the pitch because it's there's still the hangover maybe of Matias Almeida's system amongst these players. But yeah, for me they have got a great side, but they will take time. But I think they will be given that the way that they've gone about the head coach search and finding the manager they want. At no point were they rushed in doing so. They haven't gone out and panicked. They haven't decided, we need to do this. We have to change direction. They've brought in someone who they think will be long term for them. So at least they seem to be. The future looks quite good for San Jose on paper at the moment. Would you say?
Yeah, I think in the long term. Short term, it looks. There's going to be some pains watching them grow. I've got a feeling, but they're always good for excitement.
Yeah.
That's one thing. They're always an exciting team to watch.
Definitely.
Scoring late winners or giving up 5 goals a game. You just always have to watch the Earthquakes.
Definitely. That sort of wraps up the teams. For you, it's can you give us a side that you think finished well last season that you don't have as much confidence on this year, maybe from the transfers they've already made so far or the lack of them, and maybe a team that finished lower down who really look like they're going to be back up and competing at the top of the conference?
It's a hard team to pick, but Minnesota is not thrilling me, and they dropped last year. I could see them falling out of the playoffs. I could see them improving. It's hard to say, but I kind of have a feeling that they might be heading down before they come back up. And teams that were out of the playoffs, it's 2 easy picks there. Seattle and Kansas City.
Yeah, definitely.
You just almost can slot them in. I think they're almost automatic.
Yeah, I think so. And if I'm going with you, I think it will be Minnesota, and I want to say RSL, but I can't. That would drop out. But I don't know whether to. And I'm tempted to go with FC Dallas just as they try to whether they'll have one of those seasons where things don't quite click in the final third, maybe that could drop it down a bit. Austin as well. I'm still not sure. I'm concerned that they might end up losing Driussi, and that would have such a huge effect on the team. But if he ends up staying and stays healthy, then yeah, there'll be a playoff side.
Yeah,
Mike, thank you so much for joining me today, Mike. Really
thank you, Mike.
Chat with you. Can you remind everyone just where they can find you on Twitter and keep up to date with all the St. Louis news leading into the season?
Yeah, on Twitter we're at Soccer Capital Podcast, at Soccer Capital, and we're on the Soccer Capital podcast. It comes out almost every week on wherever you find your podcasts.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll get a link to that as we send this out on Twitter so that everyone can quite easily just click that and follow. It'll be really exciting to chat to you more in depth about St. Louis as we get a bit more of an idea of what that roster is going to look like stepping into the expansion season. Certainly
look forward to that.
Brilliant. Thanks very much again, Mike. Really appreciate it.
And thank you. Take care.
Take care, buddy. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.